once you open up the Padlet, you should end up at a screen like this. Now, when you run Padlet, it will give you the option of either continuing as a guest or creating a login. You can create a login if you like to, or you're very welcome to continue as a guest. The way that it works is it's like a sharing screen where we can all create posts. And so what I've done is I've created a series of columns. You'll see, and if you want to look at my screen for a second or look at your own, it's up to you. You'll see there's 4 columns. Initially, we've got a column called questions. And then within that, I've created a post. So if you wanted to ask a question, for example, it could be a question to the community or a question to Blake or myself, then just hit the plus button underneath and it'll open up a post ready for you to start typing. You give the post a title. So my question is, and then, or, you know, it could be a question about frameworks. It could be a question about anything, and you just type it in there. And when you finish typing, just click up in the top part of the screen and it puts it in as a post. Anybody can come along then and actually either like the post or comment on it. And so we've put some columns there, which should be fairly self-explanatory. And then when it comes to the breakout rooms, what I've done here is I've put a column here where you can find out which breakout room you're in. And if you look down the list, you should find your name there. That's up to date till about 9 p.m. last night. I know there's a couple of people that have joined this morning, so we'll sort you out separately in a second. And then once you found your name, we've also highlighted the breakout rooms here, and you should see your name again here. And then what we'd like you to do, so for example, if I look at breakout room 2, is we'd like everybody to just create a post, introduce yourself, and really just answer 3-4 questions. How are you currently using EfL to support post-16 provision? Are there any frameworks that you're using? One of the common questions that Blake and I get asked is, oh, have you got this framework or that framework? And so this is a great opportunity for us to help each other. Crucially, we'd like to know what your next steps are. What are you thinking next? What's the next challenge for you as far as EfL goes? And then obviously your contact details. And what we're thinking here is that you can imagine there are 130 people registered. Obviously, we've got probably 70 people here today, but this can be a fabulous networking tool. Hopefully this will be something you can come back to. And so what we'd like to start with just over the next 5 minutes or so is if you can log yourself or join the Padlet as a guest, locate your column. And if we could literally do what some of our room chairs have done, just all you do is literally find your column, hit the plus button underneath, write the name of your school or college in the title. So I might put in here Greenmount School, which is my demo school. And then you can literally start writing, how are you using EfL in post-16? And then just type away frameworks. Next steps, or what you're interested in, and then your name and email. And then if you're feeling brave, just put some formatting in. It'll make it easier for people to find the relevant information. And then when you finish, you just click away. So if I just put on my little pointer, I'm just going to click away up here. And then what you can do is when you go back, hover back over your post, you'll see you get an option to edit it, delete it, or these 3 buttons. If you can click on those and then just turn it pink. And then what we'll do is we'll get everybody to put their posts in pink. I'll leave everybody for 5 minutes just to start filling this in, and then I'll call us back and we'll get into the first lightning talk. I'd like to thank speakers today. We've got Steve Katchik, who's at New Friars College, Martin McKenna at Foxfield School, and Jonah Stankham from Bridge College. They're going to each talk for around 15 minutes. So very much a whistle-stop discussion around how they've been using evidence for learning, but also to provide a little bit of context about their schools. From here, we're then going to get into the breakout room. So Steve, I'll hand over to you. You should be able to share your screen.
Great. Thanks, Alan. Morning, everyone. I'll just share my screen now. Where are we? So my name is Steve Catchick. I work at New Friars College in Stoke-on-Trent, and we've been using evidence for learning for probably around sort of 5 years really. We sort of dipped in quite early on, and we've been on sort of a journey ever since. So I will start working through the presentation. So can I just check with everyone, is the first slide coming that talks about our college?
That's right, Steve. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
Fab, thank you very much. That's great. So yeah, as I said, we're in Stoke-on-Trent. We're an independent specialist provider. We used to be part of another school. We were the FE department to another school, Blackfriars School. And a few years ago, we had to become independent so that we could offer special needs education to students up to the age of 25. If we hadn't, we'd have been sort of capped at the age of 18, really. So we sort of broke free from Blackfriars School. Our head teacher did a lot of work and staff to enable us to become an independent college. So we've changed from Blackfriars FE to New Friars College, and then we've become an independent specialist college. That now means we can support students from the age of 16 to 25, which is fantastic for us. So roughly around 175 students on roll, 16, potentially 25. Our oldest student is about 23 at the moment. We'll see if he makes it through to 25. And part of that is if we think and the students feel and families feel and carers that the students are no longer sort of benefiting from being at college, we'd support them sort of to move on to other settings, and then that would free up spaces for new students to come through at a younger age. So breaking the college down, we have a lower college offer and we have an upper college offer, so 16 to 18, 18 to 25. The lowest college students are in for 5 days a week for the first 2 years, and then when they move into upper college, they move into a 3-day provision. The reason behind that is we want to start working on that transition out as well. So on those other 2 days, potentially the young person could be attending a day centre, work experience, another project, and that transition begins, and we support with that transition. And then when the students do finally leave New Friars, it's not a massive shock to the system, but then those 3 days we can sort of build on those preparation for adulthood skills and liaise with parents, carers in the settings that the young people are in. And then within that, we are like a generic special needs setting. So we have students with all needs, all sort of varying sort of disabilities. So we've broken it into 3 pathways. We've got a vocational pathway, our formal learners, independent living pathway, our semi-formal, and supported living, our informal learners. So we sort of work in that model. So COVID's forced our hands, so we're now sort of grouped into sort of 3 different areas of the college, into 3 bubbles. But before that, the students were sort of mixed around the college, spending time with each other when possible. But in some ways, this has really helped group teachers and staff together as well. So it's one of the sort of positives of COVID, if there are any really, that it's just changed the way we work as a college. So moving on again, our curriculum offer external qualifications, NCFE, BTEC, English Speaking Board, DAV, sports leaders, and these are generally delivered at level 1, level 2, some at entry 3, and we do have one young person doing an AS qualification in English, which is fantastic. One of the things that we have done since becoming New Friars College is freed up a lot of opportunity. We've redesigned our curriculum, so we now offer a lot of New Friars step-up qualifications, and these are taught at entry level 1, and they do go up to level 1 depending on who the young people are. And as I said within the slide, we can really offer like a personalised learning journey linking back into EHCP targets. So I might be teaching a group of young people. I'm looking for different things from those students. They might all be working towards a horticulture qualification, but the outcome for me can be differentiated and different, which is really exciting. And again, that's following the RAPA model. So we use the RAPA framework to deliver those. I said that our typical week includes vocational pathway days, good health days, independent living, work experience. So all students get to experience those in ways that are appropriate to them. As I said at the bottom, developing the RAPA model has been a game changer. So when I've spoken to parents and carers of students who are potentially joining us post 16, the fact that we're not following say an NCFE or a BTEC, we can personalise that learning. It's been really exciting for the student, but also the families as well, because we can focus on those needs, which is brilliant. And having the RAPA model underneath it to give the rigor, give the sort of moderation. And one thing I'm really excited about is the opportunity to cross moderate with other settings through evidence for learning, which is something we're really interested in doing. Moving on again, how do we currently use evidence for learning? So loads of frameworks for EHCP targets is PLGs, frameworks for qualifications, so internal, external qualifications, whole college frameworks, eco college, preparation for adulthood, SMSC. So all students will link into those frameworks, and it helps us as the college track how we're doing across all three strands, be that independent living pathway, be that vocational, or be that the supported living pathway. We'll drop back into that, and I'm going to show you some of that later on. Data drops, we use in the assessment books, so we do EHCP data drops and we do qualification data drops. And again, evidence for learning has pulled everything together, something that used to take quite a while to do and process. It can be done in one staff meeting. We've got all the information for 170 students in one go, and then that can be exported out, and then our data manager will work on that and see how we're doing. So that's been a really exciting sort of progression for us. We use indicators for our EfL, so looking at levels of engagement. We've got two sets of levels of engagement or levels of independence. Students are informal learners in the supported living pathway. It's looking at levels of engagement. Our students in the independent living and vocational, we look at levels of independence, and that might, for example, focus on they needed full support, partial support, they did it independently, or it was secured, and that can show that learning journey and that progress over time. A few years ago, we started using EfL to do end of year reports and unit reports, sharing those home, and that pulled everything together again. Again, it's one of those processes at college that took a while to do, lots of Word documents flying around. All staff add photographs in, they add a summative report, and then that gets collated really easily through using tags. And then we've been sending those home as paper copies. I worked out last year it was about 7,000 pieces of paper. So this year we're going to do that through the parent portal. So as part of our sort of digital plan to move forward, we're going to move away from using paper wherever possible, which has been really good. And then teacher tags and reporting tags. We've not used tags loads, but we have used tags for staff tracking work, and I'm going to show you some of those and some screenshots in a bit. And that's something I'll probably explore more over time as well. And our big focus at the moment, again, we were working on this, but with the pandemic we're all part of, is really developing the parent portal, and evidence for learning will be our college VLE for sharing work home. And again, what's really exciting, the parents who have been part of a trial for me, they love the fact they can see the work that's happening in college through the journals, they can share work back in, but the fact we can then drop back in and tag that work to EHCP targets or qualification targets to show that sort of secure learning is really exciting. You know, that's a really lovely feature of the app that we're developing. So next steps, I said parent portal, developing the use of the assessment books. At the moment, assessment books are just used for those data drops, those half-termly intervals, but we'd like to set it up so staff can baseline as they go along and have it more of a mark book really, and then still do those timed data drops, but have it as an ongoing tool for staff to use. And our big one as well is we're using insights, so we're exploring how we can use insights. At the moment, we mostly export out through the app, but insights, and Alan's kindly done quite a few webinars with us. Looks again really exciting, and it's just making that time and getting all that set up. So we plan to have that set up for our March data drop, so we can see how insights explores that data and shares that data. I'm moving on again. When Alan asked if I'd be happy to do one of these talks, which there was, which is fab, he asked for a focus. So I just want to talk to you just for a few minutes around evidence for learning for reporting. So as I said there, end of year reports, unit reports, so moving away from paper. We use it for qualifications. I teach NCFE qualifications, and the moderators come in and they absolutely love the fact it's within the app. There's videos on there, there's interviews with the students on there, there's peer assessment, self-assessment through videos and work. And that's been a really good tool for collating all that information for us moving forward. And again, we use it for whole college tracking, such as we recently got a Green Flag Award for eco schools, and then all students across the college contributed from through different teachers as well. And Zoe, our eco schools lead, I sort of worked with her and we put together a report, and that was sent through to the eco schools project, and they were blown away by the app and how it collated everything. They could see how the students have been doing stuff in college and in home as well. So reporting for us is a really good, it works really well, and it's, I think, a really strong feature of what we can do. So if I move on again, I've just got a few screenshots just to finish off. I've got no idea how long I've got left, so I'll just keep going. I've got 3 or 4 screenshots.
Fine,
so this is, oh great, thanks Alan. This is an example of the Eco School Green Flag Award. So when we did it, I ran a report and we had over 1,000 pages. So we had to cut that down because I think the PDF came in at about 540 megabytes, which I don't think we'd ever got to Eco College or Eco Schools. So we refined it. Using the framework, we could just identify the different outcomes we wanted to share through, rather than that was the whole report. And we broke that down just to 3 frameworks around recycling, around, I think, the school grounds, and one other aspect. So it really allowed us to filter down. And then we also chose just certain students that we wanted to showcase from each of the pathways: the supported living, the independent living, and the vocational pathway. The document was too big, really, so we just chose 2 students from each. And then Zoe said, these are the students to work with. So just a screenshot there. So that's a young person from our supported living pathway taking part in the eco schools lesson, and then the feedback through there. So I'll move on again. Again, this is another eco schools one. This is another teacher. We've got our own woodland, which is fantastic. So a group of students from the vocational pathway go and learn about coppicing, woodland management, conservation. So again, a couple of videos in there. John, the teachers, put some commentary in. But as you can see, just below his tag, which is his initials in the academic year, it linked into global citizenship and biodiversity. So he could link back in through his subject. I link in my subject, sport teachers link in, the staff that do recycling link in. And underneath that, it's got a New Friars College certificate, and that's Introduction to Wildlife Conservation. So within that piece of evidence, we linked into the Eco Schools framework. We linked into a New Friars College framework for our sort of internal qualification, but also, which I haven't shown on here, we linked into the EHCP targets of the young person as well. So that sort of caught all those 3 things. And now we've added some more skill sets framework. So for a piece of evidence, we'd probably tag maybe 5 different frameworks, which when you talk to staff about it, it sounds quite ominous, but when you actually do it in the moment, it literally takes 1 or 2 minutes to link all those different aspects of the sort of week in at college. Moving on again, using our RAPA qualifications. This is one of my students I work with. As you can see, this is like an end of unit feedback. So we've used the comment templates to sort of give structure, so there's consistency for staff using these. We've put a video in, giving feedback to the students to get their reaction, and a couple of photographs to capture what they're doing. And then we've written that in the first person, so a general overview of what's happened, and then in the first person back to the young person about how they got on, and we capture their reaction through the video. And you can see there, my last slide, that linked into their step up qualification. We tagged it with step up 3, that's sort of equivalent to entry level 2. A reports tag, so again we can find it when we're filtering through the app, and my teacher initials, and then below that the indicator showed how much support was needed. So that sort of in a nutshell, really, I guess. So yeah, loads of really positives through the reporting. We're excited to become more digital, pushing forward with the parental engagement. Feedback from parents so far has been really positive around that. And then just working on that sort of collaboration home where possible. And parents have been sending all sorts of things in through lockdown, which is brilliant, because we drop back in and link those back into EHCP targets and things like that, and qualification targets. And that's my whistle stop presentation at New Friars College. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Steve. That was really informative, and I'm sure people found that really useful to listen to. So thank you for sharing your story.
Okay, I'll stop sharing my screen now.
That'll be absolutely fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
And just as Steve stopped sharing his screen there, I'd like to introduce the next Lightning Talk speaker today, which will be Martin McKenna, and he's the head teacher at the Fox Field School.
Brilliant. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm going to both discuss about my new school. I just became a head teacher just in September, and sort of where we have moved with Evans for Learning in our post-16, and also my previous school, which was Palmerston. And we used Evans for Learning for roughly around about 5 years. And I just seen some of the faces I've recognised and met quite a few people on this call today. So Foxfield School, where I'm currently head teacher, is roughly around about 148 pupils. Of which around 50 are within post-16, and a complete range from complex medical to SLD. Our school, really, our overview is we're broken down into 4 different areas: pre-formal, an informal, a semi-formal curriculum, and a formal. Now, we've just created this over the last 3 months, and we just literally rolled it out last week. Was the start of it. So as I say, our aim is for this to be really fluid, and post-16 is built amongst or on top of these 4 areas, with preparation for adulthood as a key sort of overriding theme for all pupils. So we offer that personalised learning. For us as a school, it was really about, not really about differentiation, but really about being fundamentally different, and really offering the pupils something that met them at the point of learning, and really giving them that opportunity to explore, to be listened to, and really target our teaching and learning to provide them with opportunities to move forward in their preparation for adulthood. So as I say, it's been a hectic 3 months, and with COVID, a bit like what we previously said, it's actually been really exciting, and quite, although COVID's come in and it's been really horrible what's happened, for us as a school, me as a new head, it's really given an opportunity to sort of strip back everything, use the recovery program, and actually find out more information about the pupils and where we're going to start from and where we're going to go to and why we're going to do it, as opposed to just fitting them into boxes. It was all about that personalization, not creating that curriculum. So really our intent from a school was, what are we going to learn and why are we going to learn it? And this is leading into adulthood. What do we want for them when they leave school? What are we preparing them for? What skills are essential for our pupils to learn, and why, and how does that differ between each pupil? And for us as a whole, it was that education starting point should not be about us. It should be about them, their needs, their aspirations, and their goals. And that's just capturing on from what Steve said about making it as personalised and as fluid as we can as a curriculum. Overall, we then, as I say, part of our governors, our parents, all our staff came together, and we created this sort of motto or ethos for the school to create happy, safe, independent, healthy young adults who are social communicators. And most of the time when we spoke with parents and got all the feedback, and we had a variety of different Zoom meetings with different characters, and also brought the pupils in on a lot of this, it was all about being happy and fun. You know, we had some strange requests as to add to the curriculum, but really when we broke it down, it was for them to be happy, have fun, and be safe, was what most of our parents want. So for post-16, and the topic that I'll discuss today was post-16, and moving on towards preparation for adulthood. But before I start, I just want to say, I know Steve did touch on it, hasn't he? They're just sort of the start of using tags. For me, in my previous school with an Ofsted, etc., we had Ofsted last December, got outstanding in my previous school, and tags were the most important thing. I can't reiterate that enough. Tags were absolutely crucial for deep diving for all of the Ofsted. And that was just to touch on that, just because Steve had touched on it, that, for example, they deep dived us on physical health, and we looked then, we were able to go pick a pupil and let me show the evidence. So we then were able to pick the pupil, filter them out through the tags, go to physical health, and create a report straight away for that pupil or that group of pupils or within that subject. And it also give the staff something there and then. They were never caught on their feet. They were able to straight away pull up. Now, I know you can do it through frameworks, but the advantage of tags is we can jump across all the different frameworks. So for me, tags are probably one of the most important things that I would say in the app, and to use them. As I say, our post-16 curriculum, and I know Emma's on the call, was built really on 4 areas, and I'll show you the PowerPoint at the end of how we've done that. But the 4 areas of and preparation for adulthood played a key part and a key feature on it. So employability. Employability is probably one of the things that if you've seen me talk before, is one of the things close to my heart. I think all of our people should be offered the opportunity for employability. John Thompson from Mill Green is also on the call. And last year, sorry, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, myself and John came together and we started working with very different companies and creating bespoke sort of packages and accreditation for our pupils that were actually from the industry. So we were working with, for example, the entertainer, we were working with a bar, and we were getting skills then pupils would need when in this sort of industry or this part of work, and then we're getting the employer to then accredit this. So this year from Foxfield, we have made links with the Shankly Hotel. We haven't had any pupils out, obviously, due to COVID at the moment, but our aim really is with the Shankly, because they've one of the hotels in Liverpool, they have such a range of jobs. We can write little job descriptions, put them in as frameworks. When staff are out, they can then collate and collect this evidence, put it again, and then the company, for example, the Shankly, will then provide an accreditation for all the pupils going forward. What this also allowed us to do is start to build CVs for our pupils and getting them ready for school. So as well as this, we also tag CV as one of our tags. So we might do employability, which is how we would tag this. And then we'd also add in a Shankly work experience, etc. So we'd use a variety of different tags for this. But for example, with the CVs, we would tag CV on a pupil's work experience and any work they're doing around employability. When it comes to them going for a job, they then have a pre-written CV, which also includes videos. So some of our pupils who might be very good at verbally explaining what they've done are able to press a button and show it. And this was really effective for one of our pupils who was working in Barbrito and who was non-verbal. And they were able to create a profile of them actually on a job and working. Then going forward to their next placement, which was being their coffee, they had a full portfolio of what they were able to do. So were they able to make drinks, were they able to clean up, and what actually they do, how was their customer engagement, etc. So this is really an important part for us, the employability. For independent living, that links back to people's PLGs, but we've also in school organised through frameworks, cooking, cleaning, and organised myself. And one of the most important things, and just to mention, that we've been using over the last couple of weeks, especially with lockdown, was the activity channel on the web console, and actually uploading some of these frameworks and parts of the frameworks home to parents. So we, as Steve was saying, we can gather this with the parent portal and gather all this evidence in to create as much as we can for these people's going forward through employability, or sorry, through independent living. And the parent involvement has been key with that. For community, we've also set a community inclusion. We've also set a variety of different frameworks, for example, town training, where pupils go into, for example, one of our local shops, Primark, and we check, can they check and find the size of their clothes? Do they know who to ask for help? Are they able to find a change room? Are they able to pay? Do they know what to do? And all of these little small, for us, small areas are crucial to our pupils. And this problem solving and be able to capture this evidence just further boosts their confidence. And we reflect and review this, it actually instills that confidence in people. So next time they go out, we know exactly where they are. We also use it for travel training, local community, and using the very different links in the community for community inclusion. And most of them have came through frameworks, but also tagging community inclusion, etc. So we were able to track our preparation for adulthood. Our health has been a huge one. We have introduced in Foxfield, introduced the physios and also speech and language to the app, and then now any intervention they do. Also, we have some frameworks put up for regarding sex education and mental health. We've also, for some pupils, linked in ASDAN accreditation through sport and exercise, etc. They've come through frameworks. Again, with health, it's all around working with the parents and actually getting a great idea and actually showing the information. One of the things that we thought was really important in previous school, with the permission of parents, was also around pupils having little absences or else fits. And this was key for us to share information back and forth with parents. And we videoed this and put it on each pupil's portal. And that leads me on to links for college. And as we know, transition is exceptionally hard for a lot of our pupils. I think the app, and especially for preparation for adulthood, the app provides us with that opportunity and that sort of information that all sits there to be shared with college. So when college was coming in, we got permission of parents and we give the colleges access to pupils by sending off PDFs, etc., but also going forward in school, actually letting them use the app to see what pupils learned, what are they like employability, what's their independent like, what's their community inclusion like, what's their health like generally, how do they interact, how do they communicate, and straight away to Snapchat, rather than just, I don't know what other areas are like or other LAs, but within Liverpool, and I know in the world, transition into college, as good as it is, unfortunately due to time restraints, we only usually get people from college in for 1 or 2 days to do that transition and to be actually with each individual pupil, which I fully understand. But the app has opened up these college links and allowed us to really increase the knowledge that we're passing on to colleges, so the transition can be as smooth and as effective as possible. And really, for us, this is our new post-16 creation. And this sort of gives an overview of what our post-16 will look like. Although we've slightly changed the names for the 4 areas of preparation for adulthood, it's really around independent living skills, again, community access, my future through employability, etc., a better me, and most important, better life skills. And one thing I'd like to come on to just is on the last talk, one of the things that really resonated with me was Rosanna and Swiss Cottage. Now, we were doing some reflection within school, but with our new timetable rolling out after Christmas, one of the things that we've started to do is very much what they have been doing, is to add in 30 minutes of reflection a day as best we can, or 15 minutes a day, sorry, and 30 minutes on a Friday. And just so us, the staff team, can really reflect on the progress of the pupils and actually have that information and move forward every day. We were reflecting on it previously, but now we're reflecting on it within the app through using map, etc., and putting these comments up. But thank you very much. If you have any questions, as I say, just contact me. I'll put my email address on the Padlet. Thank you, Blake.
Thank you very much, Martin. I really appreciate you taking the time to share that. It's really useful to us for everyone to hear. So thank you so much, Martin. And the next person we're going to have talking today, I'd like to welcome Jonah Stancombe, who's assistant principal at Bridge College.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Jonah. Yeah, we can hear you. We can see your screen as well, Jonah. So that's fantastic.
Should I check it's moving as well?
Go on. Yeah, thank you.
Is that moving on?
Now it has done. Yeah, perfect, Jonah. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
All right, great. So hi, yeah, I'm the assistant principal at Bridge College. We're based in Manchester. And we've been using the app for about 6-7 years. We've had it, and we've been using it for all different things. So our journey sort of progressed. I'm going to talk today about the way we've changed the way we use the app. And I'm going to talk a little bit about our curriculum and the way that we embed therapy into the things we do. But also, we've just started using Insights. We're at the start of the journey with that. So I'm going to discuss that a little bit today. So as I stated before, we are an independent specialist college in Manchester. So we have young people that are aged between 16 and 25. A variety of reasons why the learners are at our college. We've got learners with autism. We've got some learners that might have what would be deemed as challenging behaviour. We have PMLD learners, and we've got really complex health needs. We've also got a newly set up course of people that are going into supported internships. So we've got a large variety. Our cohort has changed a lot over the years that we've been set up as a college. But the main overarching thing that we have is we're preparing young people for the next stages of their lives and they're adults. So we're looking at that as our main way that we're thinking about our curriculum intent and what we need to do. So our curriculum, we've tried to make it really fluid. We've tried to make it as similar as we can across the board to meet all these different needs. We didn't want to sort of just have people stuck in one area. We want them to be able to progress throughout the curriculum. So we have a sort of structure of around these sort of 4 areas that I've stated. We have PMLD learners. We have what we'd call our core learners that are in the main part of the college. We have a separate ASC provision to meet the needs of learners that might require that. But that's really around, the curriculum would be the same. It's about the environment and what they would get there. And we have a separate SI course, and that specializes slightly because they're looking just at employment and work in that and getting meaningful employment. So around 2 years ago, we redesigned our curriculum, and it was because we were growing. We've always had a RAPA-based curriculum. We've always put the learner at the center of that curriculum. We've always looked at their aspirations and needs, and we used to just set lots and lots of individualized targets for that. When we had a smaller cohort and a more consistent cohort, that was easier to achieve. But 2 years ago, we wanted to consider the preparation for adulthood guidance and slightly change our structure. And we thought it would support practitioners. We thought that would give a new impact for learners as well. But we wanted to keep at the center of our curriculum this idea of putting the learner first and having those aspirational needs and those individualized targets. So we needed to do quite a few different things, and we needed to look at how we could do that using evidence for learning. And one of the things about it is how flexible it is and how we could do that. So we wanted to make sure that we could meet the needs of all these different learners that we had coming in for a changing cohort. So we looked at a completely bespoke RAPA-based curriculum, and we looked in the areas of employment, health, community and independence. So we based it around that, and we looked at assessment frameworks for that. But we also have functional skills and accreditation that run alongside it. We have this person-centered approach that goes for everything, and we've embedded therapy throughout this as well. So this is a sort of overview of our assessment model. And as I said, it's fluid. We don't put people in one area, and this is why evidence for learning is quite useful. But essentially, we've embedded therapy throughout all these different areas that we've looked at: community inclusion, employment, skills for independence and health. And we created assessment frameworks that we used assessment books for on the app. And it sort of travels through to this idea of the supported internship and gaining the skills to get that paid job. But we don't expect learners to travel through it. They can be on any part of this, and it meets the needs of what they require. Alongside that, we embed functional skills, we embed communication, and we do that for assessment books as well. We have our own bespoke communication framework we set up, and we use BKSP for our functional skills, and we run accreditation as well across our courses. So it's really RAPA focused, but we can bring in those other things. With the frameworks, we didn't want to miss those real individualized goals that we have. So we brought in the idea of a tiered therapy system. So therapists embedded lots of therapy into these frameworks, but if it's something really, really bespoke, we're still using PLGs to set those individualized targets. So we're using both assessment books and PLGs on the app to achieve that. A sort of brief overview of how this might work in terms of these stages, in terms of the assessment model we use as well. So we're just using a real simple thing of emerging, consolidating, established and generalized. And we use that same assessment model in whether we're using PLGs or whether we're using these assessment books on the app. And learners can be on any part of these stages. And that was why we needed evidence for learning, because we needed a way that you could just assess all three different parts, and you didn't have to just say, you're solely stuck at this stage, because we have learners on all different stages across those different assessment frameworks, and we needed something that was flexible and could do that. And I can talk a bit more about that later on, about how we achieve that using it. In terms of how we're using the therapy team, we have a tiered approach with them. And again, this is fluid as well. If a learner needs more of this, we'll bring in more therapy at these different tiers. So we have therapists on site at college all the time. We have fully employed therapists in our team. So we have an OT team, we have a physio team, and we have a speech and language team. We also have an assistive technologist. And we wanted to really ensure that they were fully utilized and they were really in touch with what we're doing with the curriculum team. So when we produced our curriculum, when we produced these frameworks, we got the therapists to sit down with us, and they embedded everything that they could into the frameworks. And then anything else that was that truly bespoke thing, because our learning cohort was changing, because it's so individualized, occasionally it might be something we've never ever seen, and it's not something that we've covered, but we still need to meet the needs of those learners. And what we do is we make sure that the therapist can come in at that point, and they can plan a therapy intervention at that stage. So anything that we can't fully embed across the college, they can still get that opportunity to work with that learner. As much as we can, we're using an embedded model, and we want to get that in. So we have learners on these different tiers of that therapy, and if it needs to change, it will change, and we'll just work a way of getting that therapy input into it, because they'll require that for their learning. A little sort of idea about our subject alignment, because we wanted this to also all come back to learner aspirations to that EHC. So we didn't want to miss any of this, but we found that this model of having this idea of employment, skills for independence, health, community inclusion, it fitted really well with the ideas of our learners' aspirations, what they had on those EHCs. But we needed to make sure that this was there was some kind of structure across the college how it was taught. I mean, they're worked on throughout their college time, but we sort of roughly align this to the subjects that we have, and we looked at it, and that would help our practitioners, our teachers, to plan in those areas. So these are the real core skills that we felt our learners needed to learn and what they required in college. And previously, when we had practitioners teaching some of these subjects we'd have across college, they were focusing a lot on those skills that you might learn in an area, say, of catering or horticulture, and not looking at the wider sort of softer skills that might be brought in these areas and those core skills that our learners needed. So we gave that structure across the curriculum. We put the different subjects into these areas to provide that. But what's great about the app is it's not to say that they just get stuck in this area. They've still got that full person approach. They're still looking at all these areas. And we found that it has really helped breaking it down in this. And we've been in this time of COVID, things like working our learners' understanding of health and the idea of what they have to do to stay safe in terms of health it's been more and more true this year. And we've already had that in the curriculum. It was there. We already work on those skills, so we can just focus on that area, and everything was in there. It was all linking back to the things they had on those aspirations, and that provided the practitioners, the teachers, with the idea of what they had to teach, how they had to do it, and then they could break it down for those individualized aspirations for the learners. So on top of all of that as well, we had to make sure that with all these different areas, our learners could understand that, because there's a lot of information there. So we might do a full assessment across that assessment framework, and teachers might use it for planning. But what we wanted to do was make sure we're individualizing and focusing on the areas that were important for those learners. So we take that information, we put it into sort of learner-centered ILPs that are accessible to those learners, and we have those breaking down as well for the needs of that learner. So they're all individualized, they're all changed, but these link directly to their aspirations that they have on those EHCs as well, and they have those different areas they're working on. And what you see is often those aspirations cross over into all these areas of that preparation for adulthood, and there's lots of link and crossover, and that's good because you can capture that on the app as well. But this helps the learners to know exactly which parts of that they're focusing on, and it helps them to understand their learning program, and that's what we're really all about at the time. So it's just a bit of an overview of how our use of the app has changed to deliver our new curriculum, and how it's changed over time. So it's changing year on year. I mean, just last year we were using it solely for gathering evidence, and we had PLGs. We had personalized PLGs, but we weren't really assessing or tracking on those PLGs. They're more on there just to attach lots of evidence on. We weren't really using it for any sort of judgments or things like that. We had the frameworks on and we were attaching things to it, but we weren't really tracking so much with that. We still had a spreadsheet to track and to collect data and to look at those things. And having those two separate systems wasn't really working. We were getting lots of evidence, but I'm not sure how closely they were sort of looking at the assessment of that. They were building nice case studies, but for practitioners, it wasn't working so well. So this year we've had this full drive of, we've decided we think we can meet basically everything using evidence for learning now. So we've moved it all on, but we're using quite a few different parts of it to achieve that. So we're using it to gather the evidence. We're using it to track these personalized therapy goals with PLGs, which is the best thing for this because they might change at any point. These PLGs they can change. We can adjust that. If the therapist needs to bring something in quickly that is a brand new thing for that learner that we've never even thought about, that can be met on that PLG. We have our assessment book set up now on there where we're gathering this data and we've brought it together. And now we're in this journey of using insights. And we're not solely using data to look at progress. We're still really case study focused, and we're still all about the evidence. But we're finding that using insights, using the idea of data, is helping to improve the practitioners, and it is having impact for learners. And there are other areas, not just for Ofsted and looking at progress, that we might use data for across to look at things. So that's where we're at in terms of that. How we've done that over time is the way we've collected evidence is sort of evolved as we've used it. But what we are seeing is now we've moved everything onto the app, we're seeing an increase in quality of evidence. And we're seeing an increase in the amount that practitioners are gathering. They're looking at these different areas of where a learner is working on. And because they're using this for all their tracking and they're looking at everything on there, they're continually looking at this evidence to support with their planning. And they're looking at these skills gaps that learners might have based on the evidence and the ideas that they have within there. It's really, really helped our practitioners, and it's helped us in building these case studies that we've used this in terms of every part of college. We've done deep dives, we've collected these case studies, and that'll be feeding into things like when Ofsted come in, they will be looking at case studies. But what we've found is having that tracking on there supported the teachers in terms of what they're doing with their planning, looking at that and helping them to get an idea of the learners right from the start of initial assessment. We're using these frameworks in that we can gather these journeys and we can look at getting everything there in one place for the practitioners so they can see it. And if another teacher has put a judgment on, they can now see the reasoning for that and the evidence they put on there. In terms of these assessment books, having it on the apps, giving it all one place that everybody can access. Previously, we were using spreadsheets and things for capturing functional skills and getting that. We have now assessment books on there with every learner on. And then the personalized goals are there as well. And what we're trying to work on is using insights to gather this data in one place as well. So you'll get to be able to see exactly what's happening in those personalized PLG goals, and with these assessment frameworks where they're working on a different area of that preparation for adulthood. But we've got them all onto the app, and we're using that for the tracking, and having it in one place. Also, you just see that evidence attached right to that area that they're working on. You get to see how many pieces of evidence are in that area of employment. So if, for instance, like Martin was just talking about, if Ofsted came in, they wanted to see that one area. So if they said, I want to see how this person's communication has improved, all that is then in that one area. I want to see this person's down and one of their real aspirations is employment. Can you show me exactly where everything is for that? It's all in that one area together as well. You get a clear view in that assessment book of all of that evidence in one place and everything together. And practitioners have really enjoyed using these as well. And we're getting live data from it. As I said, we're not using data, we're using the evidence and the case studies more than anything to show this progress. But the data is backing that up, and we have other stakeholders that enjoy that. We have governors are very, very keen on data, but what we're bringing in the way that we can use this data, and actually it's helping us with that quality assurance and that check-in of those case studies. So you can go in, we wouldn't just say that this person's got 34% of this and it's good. We're looking at the reasons for that. We're looking at that as a team. We're looking at the impact of therapy through this. We're bringing it in and we're using it for quality assurance. So we're bringing this into a new way that we're quality assuring. But what's nice is you can actually just see for someone like a teacher, you can see a quick area that you might need to work on within your lesson with that individual, and it's really supporting with that planning. And if there's handover of that learner going into a different area, everybody can see that in one place and they can look at an area of focus for that learner. And then there's also that evidence that you can check the reasons for exactly why that is from everybody. So we're at the start of the journey of gathering that live data from the app and the way we use insights and the way we feed this in. It's still going into things like meetings with governors. We won't be using this solely with Ofsted, but we're finding the best way that we can use this for quality assurance. And the idea we've brought that in is this multidisciplinary team working is something that we're really keen on this using. So what's the impact of the therapy team of what they've done within these frameworks, and how can we do that? And I visited Martin's provision and looked at the way they do quality assurance, which I found really useful. And we brought in an idea of these person-centered MDT meetings, and the way that we can use this data within this, and we can use these case studies within this, and we can check up on student learning is something that we're bringing in this year, and we're really keen to do. So we're having termly meetings where we come together as this MDT team. We're bringing everybody involved around that learner, and we're looking at the real impact of what has happened for that learner, and we're putting that learner first in that meeting. So you're looking at case studies, you're looking at what has occurred within that, and you're looking at all of these things together as a team, and then you're setting those next steps from that as well. And we're finding that the best way of doing that is by using all these parts of the app. You can quickly bring that in one meeting. You can bring all those things up. You can look at the impact that the teams have had in their different areas, and you can come together and set those next steps, or celebrate the achievements that have been made with that learner. And using the app to see that is just working out brilliantly at the moment, and you can see where we need to work on and what we need to go with those. So that's where we're at. So we're in our next steps really is looking at bringing this in for parent engagement about how these skills getting generalized to the home and the wider area. We want to start working on that more. We want to really start personalizing where these insight data go, so they go into the practitioners that need it, but also improving this MDT process together. And that's really where we're at with everything and how we're working. I'm sorry, my lights went off halfway through that in college. I'm in the dark. But.
That's great. Look, thank you very much, Jonah, and thanks again to Steve and Martin too. Great. We're on to the collaboration part now. So what I'm going to do, and I'm going to start by thanking everybody, because people have been busy on the Padlet, so that's starting to fill up now, which is fabulous. And as I said, if you've had any trouble at all, if you could just come back to this and fill it in. If you know there are colleagues that didn't quite make the meeting, I've had to take calls from at least half a dozen people that missed the window to get in. So we're going to ask them to come in and contribute to this as well. So I've reassigned the rooms very slightly, having said all this. And in a moment, I'm going to press the button, which should put everybody into their rooms. The chairs for the rooms are as per the Padlet, with one exception. What we've done with breakout room 1 is because we've had a lot of people that haven't been able to make today, I've divided that room across some of the other rooms. Alice is aware of that, but some of you will appear in other rooms. Can I ask the room chairs to just nominate somebody to effectively act as a minute taker, because we can't record what's going on in the meeting rooms? It would obviously be really, really good if we could capture some of the discussions and some of the value points that you pick up. What we're going to do at the end of the session is ask the room chairs to contribute back. And a big part of that is going to be discussing and coming up with ideas of how we take this community forward. I've been noticing on the chat already, there's been a lot of interest around some of the things that John's been doing up at Mill Green. So it may be that that's a particular group that we can take forward. So again, please do use these sessions to identify ways that we can break out going forward into smaller groups of specific interest. We'll reconvene as a group around 12:10. So in about sort of just under 30 minutes or so, 10 past, quarter past, but I'll put a note out to the room chairs. But I hope you find this next session useful. So I think everybody's pretty much back now. So let's, does any one of the group leaders want to pipe up first and sort of share their feedbacks? Remember, we could do it in numerical order if you like. John, you're top left on my screen, so you're number 3. I'll go to Claire after. Do you want to feedback, please?
Yeah, firstly, I was taking the notes as well. So if you wanted as a post while we were discussing it, you can go and jump. Sorry about that. I think what we came across as being a common theme was that we love the idea of the flexibility of evidence for learning, making it become what we all want it to be for ourselves. But in some ways, that was coming across as being a bit broad for people, particularly in our groups. So what might be worthwhile moving forward is perhaps if people can identify a particular area of interest and then be grouped together so we can bounce ideas off each other with regards areas of focus or areas of interest, or even just information gathering, because we had people who were perhaps getting to know evidence for learning at a very early stage and loved the potential, but didn't actually necessarily understand the full application of it. Alongside that, the efficiencies of use as well, getting to know it, because what was a fairly common theme was the fact that the special sector is quite small and we have a broad range of abilities. So actually how efficient it was to use across those abilities that we might find in the class or in a team group, and how evidence for learning could meet the needs of everybody to show consistency across all different levels of working, and how people actually get around that as much about sharing information. Things about setting up, there was a lot of information discussed about actually setting it up at the initial stage, perhaps getting some sort of mentor scheme, I think would be a good idea, of somebody who's really used to using evidence for learning, who's well practiced with it, perhaps offering the chance to mentor other people who perhaps are just the starting point. I know that was very helpful with us when we first started. Bless you, whoever that was, bless you. I've got a right mess of notes here. Also, yeah, one really pertinent point was about the use of frameworks, making frameworks really appropriate to individual needs. Now, I think the post that I put on before, Martin discussed about perhaps putting frameworks on that weren't necessarily attached to accreditation, but were working for different sectors that we could all perhaps contribute to as a resource would be really helpful. And also perhaps even producing our own frameworks as a group through Evidence for Learning that could be published on the website, like the ones that are already populated onto onto the platform would be very useful in the longer term.
On that, I mean, you've raised two important and really, I think, quite thought-provoking points. And can I make a suggestion that, again, because this Padlet can live beyond today, maybe one thing we could do in that second column where I've got ideas and suggestions, if anybody's interested in being part of any of these groups, as per John's suggestion, I mean, John, it'd be great if you could maybe create your employability group around some of the ideas that you've developed. Then I'm really happy from EfL's perspective to facilitate and host as many Zoom meetings as we need that bring people together. Equally, I don't want to get in the way and stop it by being a bottleneck, but if we can help, then we'll do that. So can I suggest, even as we're talking now, just so we don't lose this momentum, if you're interested in ideas, to put them in that column. If you want to set up a special interest group and just put feelers out, hey, is anyone interested in a frameworks group, an employability group, create a post, and then just if everyone adds their names to them, that could be really, really good. Is there any other major point you'd like to raise, John, before I whiz over to the next person?
No problem. I think just the obvious one is that there's a huge amount of focus on employability skills and frameworks regarding that, and living skills, independent skills as well, which I think would probably be a common theme across every breakout room.
Well, let's maybe set those up now. Like if somebody wants to create posts for each of those, and then if you're interested in being part of a group that looks at those from all aspects, you know, frameworks and everything, then chuck your name in there and we can explore where that group goes. Thank you very much, Sir John. Alex, we can see you next on the list.
Yeah, no worries. Our group obviously shared kind of the position we was at. We kind of mentioned that we're all quite individualized in our approach. I kind of said that from my approach that we spent a lot of time looking at where the learners are going to and looking at where the feeder colleges and stuff is all about, and felt the importance of really planning what you're doing for assessment, and particularly using the app so it's useful into the future. As we just said earlier, I think everyone's on different parts of those journeys, and there was a few questions on the technical side of things and bits and bobs and ideas around insights and stuff. So I think there's definitely a reason to kind of set up those sort of networking sort of things around the technical side of using the app and stuff like that. I think that's important. I like the idea of the mentorship and stuff like that. I think that be useful to some places. And then we spoke about kind of, as you saying, that kind of try not to be too broad. We talked about different sort of frameworks and stuff like that, and everyone different sort of journey. And we also spoke a little bit about the parental side, and we talked about how to engage the parents and looking at consent. So obviously we've talked about a parent sort of strand or discussion sort of networking bit, so that will feed in nicely with that. But generally it was a good time of reflection of where we are. I think people are looking forward to, at the end of COVID, to be able to push the agenda a bit further.
Yeah, great stuff. Thank you. Claire, are you there? Do you want to jump in or?
Hi, yeah. Am I live?
Yeah, you're live. Go in live.
Okay, so we were saying that we talked quite a lot about different frameworks and suggested groups to develop around that as well. We talked about evidencing for ASDAN and how we used it and how it's kind of new to ASDAN as well. So we'd got a representative from ASDAN in our group, who the relationships manager, who's coming to sort of see how this works and learn a little bit more about how the app is being used for evidence. I think they're quite new to receiving it, although I think they have received some using it. So we talked about maybe sending a couple of trial pieces over just to see if it would be sufficient enough to be used instead of the usual type of evidence that we'd normally send over. We talked about home learning and about how we're using it to evidence what we're sending home to parents, evidencing the work that parents are sending back. So obviously with Ofsted and things, I think they're obviously going to be asking about our provision and how we're supporting home learning for those students that aren't with us. And this is going to be using the tags quite an effective way of evidencing that. We discussed about using the assessment box, how often we used it, how we used it, how we're using it to do reports home, to try and save a little bit on paperwork for the teachers. And in future, the groups that we sort of talked about that might be useful would be around those that are just starting to get their heads into insights and what data to set up and what data to try and capture. And again, about sort of leadership work and sort of learning walks and what tags to set in and what deep dive tags we might be panicking that we might miss, or and sort of like little groups like that. So I'll add those to the box.
Thank you. Yeah, I was going to just in the wrap up at the end just mention that we have been joined today by Simon, Lawrence and Mel Connolly from ASDAN. Simon's been at a number of our events. He's kind of become a bit of a friend of the community. I think he's been working in one of the groups. Mel was in your group. So anybody that's interested in following up with colleagues from ASDAN, then see somebody's put in the ideas and suggestions column a post, so feel free to jump into that. I mean, that would be an obvious candidate for a group going forward, is to look at how to optimize how we use ASDAN alongside EfL and vice versa. But thank you, Claire. Martin, do you want to jump up next?
Yeah. So it was really interesting. We had people at various parts of the journey, and we also had Simon join us as well, which was really good from ASDAN. One of the interesting ones that we sort of touched upon was mainly two key areas. First one was from Ben, obviously, and he's put a question up on ideas and suggestions as well around working with support internships, but also collecting sort of evidence and job description frameworks for that when using employability, community, and sort of looking at what type of data we're collecting and why we're collecting it. And the other one I thought was a really interesting point was from Matt and Janine, and I've put this on the suggestions and ideas as well, was they're going to look at a little case study. And I thought, as a school, I think we'll join them as well around engagement with pupils within the classroom versus the community, and gathering that as a group of information. They're going to do it in our school, and we'll introduce that in our own school as well at Foxfield. So anyone else would like to join that, and then we can come back and actually look at the contrast between how pupils learn in the classroom versus the community, and look, is there more benefit for us then to create more community type frameworks, etc. And there's the rationales pre-done for us then. And that's obviously we spoke to different learners, but it gives us a nice insight and some rationale. So that was our group. It was really good to sort of catch up with people. The one question, Alan, we had as a group was around the export of videos. And this came up from, I can't remember the girl's name, sorry, Rachel, when she was asking Simon at ASDAN. Usually we obviously create PDFs, but going forward, is there any option for example, for videos or anything to be exported?
Yeah, there is potentially. One of the reasons we've held off on it is because of the potential bandwidth drag. You can imagine how many thousands of videos are on the system, and if people start downloading videos. At the moment, parents can download a video. You might have already seen that. So if a parent's watching a video, they have the option to do it. What we've looked at is building a set of housekeeping tools, mainly around accreditation. So when you want to handpick some videos, and then it would look at exporting those to a nominated location, maybe as an overnight batch transfer. But that is something that we want to look at.
Thank you. And that was really us as a group. Thank you very much for answering that.
No, thank you. No, thank you. Great. Jonah.
Hey, yeah, really interesting to split off, and we're all at different stages of where we're at, but it's always good to sort of meet as a group and recap all that. So we had a good chat, but we thought the idea of having these focus groups would be really useful, because you could get a lot more information about a really specific subject. Because often when we've set up these things, we've done things like provisions of created training and stuff like that, and there's lots of further experience we could share to really support anyone that's in any stage of the journey of doing a certain thing. So we really thought the idea of focus group would be useful. We had some ideas of some of those things we might talk about. So we also talked about our experiences from that. We talked about the idea of the sort of parent engagement and the delivering home learning through the app and how we might do that. Sophia had some really good information on that she shared with the group, because they've been doing that at their provision, and we talked about that. We talked about employment and the message that John put in before that was mentioned around the idea of how employment frameworks. I think a lot of people have talked about employment. I think that's something that everyone would like to look at. We had the idea of looking at as assessment as a whole, and then sort of linking that. We talked a little bit about insights, and Jay made a really good point about how it's, even if you're not at that start of your journey of maybe thinking about using something like insights, it's good if you're at the very early points to maybe attend that, because once you start setting things up, you might want to think about where you're going in terms of what you might use it for, and you might have to rebuild things you've already created at that point. So it could be really useful for even people at the very start of their journey to come into some of those focus groups to see how someone that's gone through the whole process has done it and how you might do it differently if you were thinking of doing that. And then we talked about how that idea of assessment might link to moderation and examples of how people have worked with Ofsted and things when they've used the app and case studies, and grab a focus group on that. That's what we thought. And Jay also made the point of, is there a useful way we could use evidence for learning potential to share some of our experiences in these areas as well? Maybe we have focus groups on some of these things, but we could also have another way that we're sharing this information, and we have had a few ideas about that. But
well, look, anyone who does have any ideas or has used other technologies, I mean, I found out about Padlet from one of the schools up in the Northwest. One of the things we want to do at some point this year is to create some very basic collaboration tools into the web console part of EfL, like a very basic version. Any of you have used LinkedIn on that. So what hopefully we'll be able to do is to actually create some of these special interest groups as part of EfL. Because, I mean, you raise an interesting point, and it seems that certainly from some of the conversations I've had, that there's a really interesting opportunity if you've got a school that you trust and have that working relationship with, where you can actually review what each other are doing through the app and use that to support moderation, so that you're, as one school or college, you're able to invite, scrutiny and support and challenge from another school and another partner, which can obviously be good both ways too. So that's a really interesting point. But if people do have ideas on other technology other than Padlet that we can use in the meantime, then please do let me know.
The one other thing I've just thought of, we didn't get a chance to talk about in the group, was that I'm interested in looking at the things that happen, how we're supporting learners' mental health, or we're seeing a lot of learners that are coming with issues with mental health, and a focus group on how we're recording progress with that, or how we're supporting learners with those needs will be something I'd be quite interested in looking at as well.
Thank you. Well, look, I'm actually going to mention something about that. Alex, who led one of the rooms, is going to be leading one of the next big community meetings, which is going to touch exactly on that. I'll mention that in a second, but thank you. Nicola Farrier, are you still with us?
Yeah, still here.
Oh, yeah.
I think most of what we talked about has already been covered by the other feedback from the other breakout rooms. We talked quite a lot about tags and the use of tags and how we use them. I think one of the things that was interesting was how we'd set up our curriculums in different ways, and how that then affected how we were using EfL to track progress and things. So the sort of focus of what we were doing. I would agree as well, the sort of the mentor scheme that we were talking about, I think that would be very, very useful. I think, one of the joys of evidence for learning is that it's so flexible and so adaptable. But it does mean that we all use it in completely different ways. So I think people who are starting out, it's quite mind-blowing because everybody's doing it differently and there's not one set way of using it. So perhaps sort of, like I say, the mentorship scheme would be good. But I think most of the other things that we covered have been covered by the other breakout groups already.
Oh, thank you. That's great news. Emily.
Yeah, hi.
Oh, yeah.
Similar to Nicola, quite a lot of the things that we've spoken about have been covered already. We spent quite a lot of time talking about ASDAN and their sort of tags and indicators, and then thinking about transition, how useful reports can be shared, that's that sort of post-19 transition. We spent a bit of time about supporting staff in seeing that, this is, to reduce workload rather than being an addition to, and still trying to prize worksheets out of some people's hands and, give them the freedom. So, no, but it was really nice to be able to have those opportunities to have discussions like we were actually in a real meeting and not on Zoom. So thank you. That was great.
Great. Thank you. Rosanna.
Hi, yeah, again, like everyone said, we had similar conversations in our group. Some people were new to the journey of evidence for learning, so it was good to be able to share things there. You did mention, Alan, that there is a Google document or Google Drive with some templates for support if people for parent letters or anything. So maybe that would be something to add to the Padlet.
Yeah, I'll put it up on the Padlet. I'll put a link to, we've got a Google Drive where a number of schools have very generously shared things like template letters that they've sent home, questionnaires, presentations they've used to introduce the parent portal to parents during coffee mornings, that kind of thing. So I'll put that into the Padlet. Thank you.
Thanks. And then we just had a discussion around student reflection, and if any schools or colleges were using evidence for learning or the evidence collected to support students' reflections on their own work, and maybe for those who can, able to think of their own next steps. So again, that might be something to add to the ideas and suggestions box.
Yeah, and I mentioned to Group 9 earlier, I think I've mentioned this to a few of you before, one of the things we are working on is a learner version of evidence for learning. It's quite a big piece of work, because as I was explaining to the group, we're very mindful that some of the students may have accessibility challenges, and so we'll be absolutely taking into account visual impairment, the fact that some of them may need symbols. So working out what that app looks like and how it functions as a separate piece to the core app is something obviously that needs quite a bit of work. And I was saying that we're hoping we'll have something on this later this year, but with COVID, obviously some of our development plans have been thrown a bit out of kilter. We've had to focus on other things. But if you are interested in any kind of learner involvement, please just let me know, and we'll get you added to the list of people that are interested in exploring that. So thank you.
Just to finish on that, there was a couple of good suggestions about how that could be done before the student app's developed. That the discussions could be in the comments, the students' input could be in the comment section on there, so they could write the next steps if they're able to. Or Kaylee talked about using emojis, kind of self-reflection for that section. And that was it from us.
Thank you. So Steve Katchik.
Hello, hi. Yeah, we had a really good conversation. Again, similar ideas have come up that we've discussed, but I'll whiz through them. Very much a real mix of some of us just started our journey, some further through, sharing ideas. One of the big things was around sharing frameworks, a lot of repetition in frameworks and things like I said, a library of frameworks that we could maybe sort of download and edit, and then that cross collaboration between frameworks. We also looked at the idea of the parental engagement, those hard to reach parents, what strategies are staff, teachers using to engage parents. I think, through the ideas and suggestions would be great to have those mentoring groups, even say, I'd love to come to some groups around sort of insights and things. So we've been using it for a few years, but there's still, I think the app is so versatile. It's really good to see how it's used in different settings, and those sort of opportunities like spending time with someone who's worked in insights would be really good. So cross moderation with staff as well, it could be like a working party around how do we roll this out to staff. So again, I think through the ideas and suggestions and having those different teams will be really good. But yeah, lots of shared ideas. Philip was working with people in their sort of 30s and 40s, which was really interesting, how they use the app in a different way as well. Wow. To sort of, doesn't end when sort of college finishes. It's still being used sort of throughout everyone's sort of life in different settings. But that, I think we've sort of captured it from, all the other sort of breakout rooms really. But frameworks for us, engaging parents, developing assessment books, and I think knowing the journey as well. I think I think Jonah said with Jay, it's good to go to those other meetings as well. It's sort of knowing you need an assessment book to use insights, and sometimes it's sort of knowing the processes and steps involved to get. If you want to use insights, it won't work if you don't use assessment books. It's sort of having clarity on what the app can do, really, because it does so much. I think it's that, it's starting with the end in sight and working backwards what you want to achieve. And I think one thing that did come up, one final thing, is not trying to do too much too soon. It's having that roadmap of a journey for staff and students and parents and carers, so you can roll it out over a period of time. Sometimes you jump in and try and do a lot, then you have to go back and unpick things because it's not quite what you wanted. It's that sort of long-term plan. for using the app because it can do so much.
Great. Well, look, thank you. Well, look, thank you to everybody. I think we've reached the end of the course. We're actually only 15 minutes over our original schedule, so that's pretty good going, I think, as these things often weigh. So thank you to the speakers who spoke earlier. Thanks to Steve, to Martin and Jonah. It's a busy time to even attend this meeting, let alone to prepare a presentation. So thank you very much for carving out that time. Thank you to all the room hosts, and I'd like to say a special thank you to Emily, because Emily jumped up to cover for somebody at about 8 a.m. this morning. So thank you for that, Emily. I do appreciate it. And thank you to you all for making time and contributing to this conversation. What we'll do going forward is we will leave the Padlet up, so that's going to remain up. So feel free to either go back, refer to it, polish off your entry, if you want to ask any more questions. I think my biggest request would be is that if you've got ideas and you're particularly interested in getting a group off the ground, then just let me know, because I can put an email out to everyone and say, hey, look, we're going to get a group together with this particular aim in mind. Who's interested? I will put the PowerPoints from today into the Padlet, and I'll also upload the video of today's session up to our YouTube channel, the EfL Learning Shared YouTube channel. And I'll send a link out to everybody with that, so you'll be able to stream the video if you wanted to watch it, refer back to anything. I'll also make available a link to a fabulous video that Roseanne did, sort of outlining some of the post-16 practice with EfL that they're doing at Swiss Cottage. And we used that at one of the last meetings. So Rosanna, if you're quite happy, I'll share that with people too. Thank you. But look, other than that, I guess I just thank you all again for your time. And if you need anything in particular over the next few weeks, as we continue to grapple with remote home-based learning, please let myself or Blake know, as well as anything else. But other than that, I wish you all a safe and healthy week, and look forward to seeing you all soon. Thank you very, very much for today. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Alan.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, folks.